Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Rosen. I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement and Operations at the Jewish Women's Foundation of New York. I'm pinch hitting for our CEO, Jamie Allen Black, who's on a very well-deserved vacation. On behalf of the entire foundation, we thank you for being with us today. It's a holiday weekend, and we know that everyone's gearing up, and we're excited that you're with us. We're welcoming you to our ongoing series of conversations with our grantee partners. We call them Jewels, Jewish entrepreneurial women executives and leaders, women who have founded and are leading nonprofits addressing today's most pressing issues around the world in the Jewish community and beyond. For those of you who don't know us so well, and as a reminder for those of you who do, JWFNY has granted more than $6 million to over 300 programs to empower and improve the lives of girls and women. That 25 years of experience in grant making has led to the work we are doing today. We have expanded and redefined our mission to support Jewish women social entrepreneurs and leaders who are using a Jewish and gendered lens to affect change through their work. They're on the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis, supporting women impacted by poverty, mass incarceration, gender violence, education, and as Miryam Kabakov, our speaker today, will tell you, advocating for LGBTQ Orthodox individuals and their families. They're the leaders we need right now, and we are proud to elevate their voices. We hope you will join us in supporting these inspirational women in their groundbreaking work. We're able to provide them with this platform through donations from people like you, and we're going to add our donation link in the chat. You can also go to our website, which is also in the chat already. Thank you. Our conversation today is with Miryam Kabakov, the Executive Director of ASHL. ASHL has a vision of a world where Orthodox LGBTQ individuals can live out their lives in the Orthodox communities of their choice. Miryam will share with us the issues facing the LGBTQ Orthodox community, how ASHL has pivoted their programming in response to the pandemic, and what's on the horizon with the holidays rapidly approaching. Before we start, a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. If you have questions for Miryam, please send them directly to Natasha Mayer by selecting her name in the chat box. She's marked as a host and as a staff member to help you find that. We've muted you all to avoid background noise, so the chat feature is the best way to make sure your message is seen. And now I'm proud to introduce the president of the Jewish Women's Foundation of New York, Rachel Weinstein.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Welcome, everyone. So happy to see you with us here today. We have some new faces as well, so welcome, welcome. We're thrilled you could join us, and we are looking forward to sharing some of Miryam's work with you. Miryam, want to chat with you about the work of ASHL, but before we get into all that, I want to chat with you and sort of lay the groundwork so that people here, a lot of people are new to the foundation, new to your work. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you know, what it is to be LGBTQ in the Orthodox community, and what are some of the challenges facing LGBTQ individuals in the Orthodox community?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I can't believe it was, when was it, when we were at the convening in October? I met some of you in person, and that feels like a world away. And I can't believe, but here we are again, we're together, and you know, more people can show up when they can't come. And this is something that I'll talk about later. You know, if you can't actually physically get somewhere, here we are, and that's really a blessing for this time. Before we begin, I just really want to dedicate my this talk and to discuss my work with you to the memory of a very close friend of mine, Susan Moser, who passed away 3.5 weeks ago from ovarian cancer. And I'm going to talk a little bit later if I talk about my origin story. She will be right there. She is probably looking down right now and laughing at me because she is the reason that I do the work that I do today. But she was an incredibly modest person, and so she would deny that and not really get it, but I will explain why later. She was only 4'11", but she was an incredible giant of a person. She filled up the room with her magnetic personality.
You were 4'10".
She really knew who her friends and what their strengths were, and she and her incredible gift that she gave to me was that she was masterful at creating community and bringing people together. And so that's kind of the foundation of what we do at ASHL. So to go to your question, Rachel, what is it like to be LGBTQ in the Orthodox community? Well, there's so much to say. And also I just want to say there are many different kinds of Orthodox communities. There's not one. And I'll give an example of two juxtaposed to each other when I bring up a case that I was just handling. But mostly, I think when it also depends on who the person is and what their family constellation is and who their parents are, the community that they're in, and their educators. So there are no two communities that really look alike. But overall, I would say that the major challenges that people face when they come out to themselves, first of all, that's one big step, is to come out to yourself in Orthodoxy. We talk with people who don't even know, they can't name what they're feeling or how they feel different. They don't really understand it. And so, you know, that once they get language, they Google us and then they find us and then we talk to them about that. And we do a lot of, you know, educating around what they are experiencing. And then there's like incredible isolation and shame and a lot of mental health issues, depression. You know, there's spiritual homelessness that people experience if they come out. They can be cut off from their families. They can be kicked out of their communities. And there's also physical homelessness. They can actually physically be kicked out and not just spiritually cut off. They can be cut off from their resources. So basically there's a tremendous fear of rejection, you know, and there is actual rejection. And I'm gonna give an example. I got 2 warm line calls 2 days ago. I'm gonna call her Rachel. She is a father and a husband in the Babaver community in Borough Park, and she's Hasidic in a male body. She was assigned male at birth, but she is Rachel. And I think I'm the first person who called her Rachel. And she was describing to me her dilemma. She's married, she has children, young children. And she said, but I just have to live my life as a woman. So I said to her, like, Rachel, let's talk this out. You know, let's talk about what you stand to lose. And, you know, we went through a few of the things and I said, do you think that your wife would divorce you? And she said, absolutely. I said, do you think that you might be cut off from your children? And she said, probably. And I said, like, are you willing to lose those things right now? And she said, I don't know, and I don't think so. So then we go to, what can you do to actually make yourself, from a mental health perspective, feel like you can actually live in your body as you are right now, until you get to a time in your life when you can actually make the changes that you want to make so that you can feel fully who you are. And there's always sacrifice involved. Then a few hours later, I got another call on the warm line from a parent in Los Angeles with a trans son who's about 18 years old. And he said, I'm Orthodox, I'm actually very Orthodox, and I'm actually okay with my trans son. You know, I miss my daughter. I'm grieving, but I want him to be healthy. So I need support. Could you put me in touch with other parents who are going through what I'm going through? So these are like 2 really starkly different scenarios in completely different Jewish communities. So there's a lot of different kinds of challenges. And for some people it's easier because, you know, we have access more to helping modern Orthodox parents and families, and they are more wanting to find us. And we focus a lot on parents because we think if the parents are good, they will raise up their children in a healthy place. And, you know, and our work is done. If the parents are okay, you know, not exactly. We work in schools and we do a lot of work in the community as well, but really it starts in the home. Yeah.
That sounds like if those individuals can be supported, right? If they have a support system, then they're all there, then they can be them, they can go through that coming out process and being who they are and figuring out that identity in a place where they're supported. And then together with their parents, you know, they can navigate how that is with the rest of the community.
Exactly. So I'll just say that, so the other part of this, the challenge is on the parents. So this is a really interesting phenomenon that we've noticed is that, you know, when a kid comes out to their parent, maybe they're 15 or 20 or 25 or whatever, they have been holding on to this for years, this secret, you know, and they're finally like, when they come out, they are in the place where they're actually kind of like accepting themselves and realizing who they are. So they're like, they've been working a lot on this internally or maybe with their friends. They come out to their parents and their parents are completely shocked. And it's like, what? You know, I've known you your whole life. This is completely news to me. And then the parent immediately shuts down and can no longer talk about that kid in community. You know, like in Jewish community in general, but Orthodoxy, you know, specifically, you see your community every week if you go to shul, you know, or you connect with them in different ways if you go to morning prayers, you know, and how is David, you know, and then all of a sudden you can't talk about David anymore. So the parents are experiencing what the kid had been experiencing their whole life, which is being in the closet. And then, you know, the parents that we, you know, are able to work with more easily are the ones that look for us. So they want to understand what's going on with their kid, but they also don't want to be cut off from their communities either. And some of their friends do, you know, ostracize them. Some of their friends accept them. And it sort of depends on how much they can actually like explain and how accepting they are. And, you know, if they're modeling acceptance, then their friends will sort of step up. So much of what we do is to connect people to each other. We have this like amazing web across the United States and Canada of peer support. We do like mentoring, and we have chapters that do support groups, you know, now over Zoom, and social events, and we have big retreats, and we just had to cancel both of them, but we are going to hopefully come together soon. But, and over Zoom in different ways, we will still be doing those gatherings. Yeah, so much, yeah, just to reiterate, building community. You know, I worked for 7 years at Avodah, the Jewish Service Corps, and the first lesson that David Rosen, the founder, taught me was that social change only happens in community. I mean, we all know this, you know, but it's really true. Like, you can't actually do anything by yourself alone ever, you know, like forever. Like, you might have a great idea and you might start an organization, but you actually cannot sustain that by yourself. So to, you know, we translate that to the support network. Like, they, you know, the parents cannot live alone in isolation, and the LGBTQ individuals in Orthodox community desperately need each other, and they become family. And, you know, when life was normal, they traveled widely to be with each other and to connect.
Well, and so much a part of Judaism is community, right? It's almost like part of the definition of Judaism is community. So to have the prospect of losing that when you're coming out and being your true self is, you know, that's like daunting, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
So that you provide that is a wonderful network for, you know, for people as they're sort of getting started on that new journey, right? And figuring out their new community.
Right.
So tell me a little bit more about, you know, some of the activities that you do. You mentioned just now the warm line. Maybe you can tell a little bit more about that. And what are some of the services that you provide? You know, are you and or some of the people who work with you also trained in mental health, whether social workers or, you know, psychologists, so like are addressing that piece as well? Tell us a little bit about what else you do to support these individuals at this time.
Sure. So I'm a social worker, so I'm coming from a mental health background. We have educators on staff, and we have people who are trained in, you know, learning how to provide support through running our support groups. And let's see, I think I would say that like one of the main entry points is the warm line. You know, we still get calls from payphones. I can never call those people back, so I have to grab that call as soon as I get it. It's somebody who does not maybe even have a cell phone or doesn't want me to call them on their cell phone. So, you know, that's often the first point of entry for people, or sending us an email. We get emails every week. You know, I cannot believe, you know, this was me 30 years ago, and I cannot believe that I'm getting emails from, it's like I'm reading my diary, you know, like I'm closeted, I don't know what I'm feeling, and yada, yada. And so anyway, so those are the entry points. We also have, you know, a lot of Facebook groups that people can connect over. So, you know, like I said before, like we do a peer support. So we've trained parents in mentoring each other. And We also have, groups that meet now, honestly, every week, some of them over Zoom, to support each other. We have a project that's called the Welcoming Shoals Project, where so far we have 185 rabbis who we've engaged in dialogue, Orthodox rabbis, around being inclusive. It doesn't mean that they're actually completely welcoming in their synagogues, but we've started discussing with them, how to handle, or like, have they thought about it, and do they have congregants for LGBTQ? So that's a really wonderful database of places, because what happens is we also get calls from people who want to, LGBTQ people that want to relocate or find a place that they can feel comfortable in. And so we kind of match them with, a community that could possibly work for them. We also, we launched last year the High School Pledge Project. And that was a project that we sort of like appealed to the alumni of yeshiva day schools to make a 30-second video saying, I went to Ramaz school and, I had a great experience, but there's one thing I know is that if I came out there, I would not have been, embraced and welcomed like I was, just being who I was, who I was known to be. Ramaz, take the pledge. And it's like a 5-point pledge of inclusion of how to be inclusive in your Orthodox day school. And, within a few months, like I would say maybe 10 to 12 Orthodox day schools adapted some kind of inclusion policy. And so now part of what we were, going to launch into was actually doing trainings with Orthodox day schools. And because everybody is sort of like figuring out, what to do about school, we're sort of taking a little bit rest, but we're getting ready to provide more resources to educators, because they will need them and they still want them. They're just not really thinking about it right now as much, but we still get calls from educators and principals on how to be inclusive in their schools. What else can I tell you about what we do?
Well, so you're really working from both angles, right? You're supporting the individuals and their families, and then you're also working with communities to make, so that the people who are receiving them are being coached by you on how they can become more welcoming. And so you're sort of working it from both sides.
Exactly. And that's kind of our theory of change, is that, so here's what happens. A kid comes out in Orthodox community. They usually sometimes wait till they go to college, or maybe it's happening when they're in high school, but then they leave. And then they can choose not to come back, because a lot of people don't move back to the home that they grew up in. But the parents, most of them, I only know 2 cases where parents actually moved after their kid came out because of the way the community was dealing with it. But most parents don't leave. And so they are then left, and this is sort of what I was saying before, like, they go to synagogue, they don't know what to say, they're closeted. So they are then left to deal with their community, their rabbi, their friends, and they don't really want to keep a secret for very long, And so what happens is that the parents then sort of are the ones that are the agents of change. They're the ones who, will maybe confront the rabbi, or at least, just let the rabbi know. We actually did a study and we found out that these Orthodox parents, the last person that they tell about their kid is their rabbi. Whereas on all other matters of like personal life, the rabbi is like the first or second person that they tell. But this is like so taboo, and they can't talk about it. So, so then the parents so what happens is we have had for 10 years running these very large retreats, and that is really the place. And I think about this a lot now, like virtual versus in person. That is really the place that people, come together, and we always do it over a Shabbat, because we want to model for the parents or the LGBTQ people what a Shabbat in utopia could be like the one that you had growing up, that was minus one really important thing, and that was accepting you for who you fully were. And for the parents, it's the same. The Shabbat you can spend in community without having any secret about your kid. And so we kind of like have this, we intentionally do it that way. And then people really, because Shabbat is really your like family time, and it's home time, and people become family. And then we actually call our group the Eshel Mishpacha, the Eshel family, you know, because people actually feel, after the experience of spending a weekend together, very close, very related. And then they go home and then they feel like they have a little bit more of a sense of like what they're asking from their rabbi, like what is it that they need and, you know, what they have a right to ask. And they get strength and they get information and they get, you know, develop an awareness about, you know, just, you know, what's needed for their kid and what do they need. And so, and I don't tell them that, the other parents do, you know, so there's just a lot of peer mentoring going on. You know, we have some pioneers in our community who, you know, were the first ones who like reached out to us and said, for the parent community, at least, like you guys, you know, my son went to your national retreat. He had an incredible time. He met friends. He has a whole new world. I need that for myself. So now we actually are able to provide that for the parents. And it's a really beautiful thing.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And your model is really not ushering people as they're leaving the Orthodox community, but really trying to find a way where they can hold their identities with their Judaism in the way that they would like, right? And be whole in terms of both.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're saying that, Rachel, because I get this all the time, or I used to do more actually. Now I'm not getting it as much, which is a good sign. You know, why do you still identify as Orthodox? Or, you know, why don't people just leave? Why can't they become conservative Jews or Reform Jews? And I don't think that's a fair question. I don't think it's fair to ask somebody to leave what they know and what they're most comfortable with. And we have people who come to our national retreat and they say, like, this is the one weekend of the year that I feel whole and I can actually observe Shabbat at all the only way that I know how, you know, and then they go back to their lives and it doesn't really work so well. So we're modeling what Orthodoxy can look like if it was fully open and inclusive and understanding, just like the rabbis of the Talmud understood, you know, like at least about gender. There were 9 genders that the rabbis talked about in the Talmud. And magically we've seemed to have forgotten about those things. And, you know, like, wow, really? You're a feminine boy, you're a masculine woman? Like, oh, I've never heard of that. You know, well, look it up in the Talmud. It's right there.
I'm going to look later. I didn't even know that. So we all have homework now because that's fascinating. I had no idea.
Yeah, and we posit that there is no reason to leave Orthodoxy if that's what you love. Now, a lot of people feel so hurt and rejected that they do leave, or they lose faith. Even our parents are like, how could it be that God is telling me my child is a sinner? You know, this is not for me anymore. Some parents have actually said that to me. And we don't want that. We think it's good. It's good for the Jews, as my dad says. Like it's good for the Orthodox community. It's good for the wider Jewish community, for the Orthodox community to be more inclusive of their minorities, and it's good for everybody.
Yeah, certainly, to keep that spirituality. And it sounds like, you know, we had a question in the chat, so I just want to clarify for people that your reach is national. You're bringing people from all over the country. You have chapters all over the country, correct?
We do, yeah, the United States and Canada. So, yeah.
Terrific. And if you're interested, you can check out Eshel's website and you can find out more about that. I want to talk to you a little bit about how you've pivoted in this time, but before I get there, I want to talk to you about you and how you came to this work and sort of like what your journey has been here and you know, getting involved with Eshel and where you've taken it.
Okay, so well, thank you for asking. It really has been a very long journey, and for me, the moment in my life when I started kind of like when I jumped on the wagon to take the journey was like 30 years ago, actually, this past summer. And I think about it a lot now because of Susan. I met her at a meeting in Jerusalem that a friend of mine, I was just going to Israel for 2 weeks. I was like on a summer vacation. I'd like finished college and I was going to visit family, and I had just come out really to myself and to my parents, and I needed to I was living in Berkeley, and I started to come out very slowly there. I was in Orthodox community. It was not easy. I had just a few friends, and this group of friends sort of said to me, "Oh, you're going to Israel. There's going to be a meeting in Jerusalem, like the last week that you're there, of Orthodox lesbian and bisexual and trans women, and you should go. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I'm going to go. So, and part of the story you should know is that I went to Stern College. I went to Yeshiva University, which is the, Stern College is the women's college for Yeshiva University. It's an Orthodox college for women. And I walked into that meeting, and the first person I saw there was the woman who admitted me and interviewed me to get into Stern College. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And she was like, Miryam, I'm doing here the same thing you're doing here. And it was like, and the memory of this room was like, it was like a dark room, and like there were like candles around the room. I mean, I don't know if this is actually what it was. Maybe it was just like lights, and, you know, it was like this very beautiful vibe. And so that was for me very foundational, that I had sort of like walked into this group of women and I was like, oh my God, I actually can be Orthodox, I can be lesbian. And it's all because there's this group of women here. And then in walked this other woman, this short woman with like a lot of energy, and she was late to the meeting, and she walked in and she started like talking to everybody, and she was very loud and talkative, and she and I became very close. And because of her, she started to connect me with other women and in that community. And all of a sudden I had like what I call a weave of women, that Esther Bronner book that came out then. And I was like, I read the book and I was like, oh my God, this is my life right now. And I stayed for 2 years. I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, and I stayed for 2 years because, you know, whatever, I was in that moment of my life where, you know, I could do that. But also I had found my home. I had found my spiritual home, and it was, you know, in Susan's circle and her orbit and her way of like bringing us all together and making it all kind of make sense. And yeah, so that's sort of where it all started for me, this very like, it's become mythical in my life from my time in Jerusalem. Whenever I go back, I always look for that weave of women, and I know that they're there, and some of them still are there. But that was a real pivotal time for me. And I was like, wow, if this is happening here in Jerusalem now, imagine how in every Orthodox community, there are people who are, you know, queer or LGBTQ, and they're hiding, because like most of those women were hiding, you know. And then we were sort of like a little bit activist about it. Like we would put, this was pre-internet, okay, so like we would put like our ads in newspapers, like, and we figured out how to phrase it in Yiddish, and the newspaper was like showing up in, you know, in Bnei Brak and all these places, and we would get phone calls from these women in Bnei Brak. And I just remember going and visiting a group, this woman called me, and I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. I was like, you know, like in my broken Hebrew, oh, you saw the ad? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to come visit you. So she gave me her address. I showed up. She lets me in. She shuts the door really quickly. And all of a sudden I see all these women sitting there. And I'm like, oh my God, this isn't just like modern Orthodox. This is Haredi. And it was fascinating. And so that kind of started me on this journey of like seeking out community. And I call it like subterranean community. These hidden communities. And Rambam, Maimonides, talks about this group of women in his community that you have to keep your wives away from them. And that is, I have an anthology that has that title, Keep Your Wives Away from Them. And I was like, well, if Maimonides is talking about this weave of women in his community, then we are everywhere. And if we are everywhere, we shouldn't be in the shadows anymore. And, you know, that Orthodoxy will thrive and flourish if it recognizes the diversity in it, you know, in every way, you know, with all the differences that we are. And for some reason, Orthodoxy tends to sort of paint a monolithic picture of itself. And it's really sad, because it's a very, very diverse world out there.
I love the image of a weave of women, and I suspect that almost everyone on this call has their own weave of women in whatever way that is, and men should definitely fear the weave of women, because we are powerful. But that's a really, really, really beautiful image, so thank you for sharing that with us. So tell us a little bit about, you know, we're in this time and place, right?
Yeah.
It's now hard to believe that we're 5.5 months of living in this new reality of staying at home and whatever. But how has the pandemic affected the LGBTQ Orthodox community, and how has Eshel pivoted to do your programming in this time?
Yeah, so I think that we are getting, like, I call them COVID calls. Like, you know, I'm under lockdown with my kid. My kid just came out to me. What do I do? Help, you know, or from the kid, you know, I'm in this pressure cooker. We've like in this close quarters, you know, I have to live my life. I need an outlet. You know, I have to go like hide in my closet and I'll make the phone call or something like that. So we're getting like a lot of that, you know, people are under close quarters, tight, you know, together, and, you know, it's kind of like facing each other in ways that they haven't been doing before. I think families I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that's one way. The other way is that people who are normally isolated and being Orthodox and LGBTQ are even more isolated. Like they can't actually physically go anywhere to see their community. You know, now people are starting a little bit that more, so the way that we have pivoted, and like everybody, right? Zoom is our like middle name, right? So, but now we're seeing people from places we've never seen people from before. Like there's this Chabad family who live in the foothills of Yosemite, and she's the mom has 9 kids, and one is transgender and one is gay. And, you know, in the past, she's like emailed me, but now she shows up to all of our meetings, cool. You know, or like this, you know, woman from the deep South who's converting and is lesbian. And she's like, she comes to our Brooklyn women's group over Zoom every week. And so that's been like really beautiful. And I don't think we would ever have done this pivot thing. Like we would never have, okay, everybody, we're going all virtual. We would never have done that. You know, we've thought about it. We had like conference calls that people would call into, which are very powerful because it is like open to anyone from anywhere. But now people are seeing each other's faces. So we're really like jumping on that. And we have like 14 chapters, and the local leaders are all also doing that. And they're, you know, even though, you know, people can show up at any meeting, you kind of still want to be with your community. Like the Baltimore, you know, group, it wants to be with Baltimore, you know. So, but, you know, there's more frequent contact virtually. And so that's been good. The other thing is that, you know, it's really been hard to reach people. Like before this call, we were talking like this discussion will live on forever on your website, right? So like we're starting to have classes. You know, it used to be like, okay, we'd have to like, you know, fly somebody out to like do a training or do a teaching, and, you know, to the specific group of people, and then we were done. Now it's all happening here, and we're developing a library. So that's been good. And I know that you guys are doing that, and that's like, everyone's kind of doing that. So that's a really important thing, because we were not doing that, and we weren't thinking we should or we could, and now we're forced to. We didn't know how it would be received. And now we're like, oh, people are actually really asking for these recordings. You know, and we're sort of like afraid somewhat to like put our voices out there in a certain sense, because we're really appealing to many, many different audiences. But I think we're okay. Like, I think people really need what we're offering. So we're not going to stop.
And you mentioned to me when we spoke last week that you got a grant to do a speed dating.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
I just love that idea.
Right. So that's the Horizon piece. Yeah. So the UJA Federation of New York has given us a grant to do some different activities around dating. Okay. So this was pre-pandemic. We knew we were going to get it. And all of a sudden this pandemic hit. And so now I think the way we're going to do it is speed dating online, because of course, and kind of like social get-togethers, like watch parties and discussions, and yeah. And we're also participating in another project called, it's a dating site for LGBTQ people who are interested in Judaism, traditional, not, but it's a place where we are sending our folks. It's called Yenta Over the Rainbow. And it's started by a developer who sort of said to us, oh, I have this, you know, product I'm working on. And then a father approached me at one of the first parent retreats that he came to, and he said, you know, I really appreciate the support you're giving me, but I have to say, all I really care about right now is my son. And my son is the kind of person that he went to YU, he got smicha, so he's, you know, technically a rabbi. He went to Yale for his law degree. He's incredibly smart, he's lovely, he's charming. And, you know, and he came out to me, and obviously because it's at the retreat, and he said, you know, and at this point in his life, we would have contacted a matchmaker and we would have had him set up. But the alternatives for him don't exist in the LGBTQ community. So I want to help you guys develop a culturally appropriate dating site for Orthodox people. We're going to get a lot of blowback from Orthodox rabbis about this one, because this is where they stop talking to us. They're like, wait, but that's the sin part. We can't endorse that. Okay, so the alternative is you're going to tell, you know, the teenager who comes out to you to live a life of celibacy and be completely alone. So that's sort of where we have to push them to think about that alternative. So anyway, so that is, so that's Sin by Q and Yenta Over the Rainbow.
That's so great. Tell us, what else is on the horizon for Eshel? Obviously the holidays are coming up. Do you have any plans? I mean, I don't even know how that works when you're Orthodox.
Yeah.
Zoom, like it's almost like a, you know.
All right, how do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Right, so one thing we're deciding not to reinvent the wheel. We are not a synagogue, but we do have a database of 185 synagogues who have engaged in the Welcoming Shoals project. So we've been reaching out to them and saying, if you are doing, you know, this is a way of virtually entering your community. And it's kind of like putting your toe in the water for an LGBTQ person to go to like a class, you know, that you're running in your synagogue. So we're trying to like connect people to communities that they will be welcomed in. For the high holidays itself, yeah, you know, we're not encouraging or endorsing Zoom on, you know, the high holidays. So what we did do was we did a DIY shofar blowing class where Rabbi Steve Greenberg taught like some of the, you know, the beautiful teachings around shofar, and his husband, Steve Goldstein, who is a trumpet player and an opera singer, taught everybody how to blow the shofar. And it was really wonderful. So anyway, so we have that, and we are encouraging people to learn how to do it, because you're going to be doing it, you know, if you're Orthodox, probably by yourself alone or, you know, in your family. And then we have a series on tshuva, on repentance. So that will be between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then for Sukkot, we're having a sukkah hop. So we're having people sort of like bring us into their sukkah, and, you know, just over Zoom, and everyone's going to sort of be like showing everybody their sukkah. So we'll be joining each other in each other's sukkah for the holidays. So we're really excited about that.
That sounds really fun. Really fun. That's so great. So you have just finished your first year as part of JWFNY's collective. How was that experience for you? How has it impacted your leadership? We'd love to know.
Well, okay, so I have to say I'm incredibly honored to be part of this group of women. The collective is 10 women who are leaders in, you know, social change organizations all over the world. And I don't think I understood that I was going to be among these women. Like, I'm sort of like, whoa, you are all incredible and inspirational. So mostly I have to say I'm inspired by them and by my peers there. And I'm just like, I learn a lot from them and their courage to do the things that they're doing. You know, some of them think what I'm doing is harder than what they're doing, and I think what they're doing is harder than what I'm doing. And so I think we've been giving each other courage, and that's been an incredible thing. And then, you know, to learn with everybody, to learn with, you know, Ruth, Jamie, and Rachel, and the whole group. We've been learning, you know, once a month, getting together. And that's been really lovely, and to connect. And, you know, like, we need community, and this is a community. And so for me, it's giving me a place, you know, as a woman leader. And I don't think women leaders have a place. You know, they don't have a community that's going to hold them up and take care of them and, you know, nurture their voice and their leadership. And that's what I feel that the collective does for me. And I think, you know, investing in leaders is just such a beautiful thing. And it's just, it makes so much sense.
Well, we're very proud to do it. And you're all very courageous. You're all challenging systems in some way or another, right? And trying to make change. And that does take courage, whether you're working in the LGBTQ Orthodox community or whether you're working on food insecurity or racial justice, you're all challenging systems, and we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of listeners on the call, and please, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, because I'm sort of winding up here a little with my questions. But you know, we have probably some listeners who maybe want to get involved with you as LGBT members of the Orthodox community, but we may also have a lot of listeners who would like to be allies to you and your work in that community. Yeah. And what are some of the things that they might be able to do?
So we're about to launch our Allies podcast. And so one thing you can do is to actually just put yourself on the, on the mailing list to get notice about the podcast. It's actually being done by my greatest ally, my sister. She did a project that we put people through an internship through Join for Justice, an organizing project. And she came up with this idea, like, she was like, I'm an ally, and I want to interview other allies to talk about what it means to actually stand there and be there by someone's side. Like, and I have to say, like, you know, I said to her, like, you know, she interviewed me for this. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. If it weren't for you, I would have fallen through a black hole, and I just wouldn't, you know, I don't know where I would be today. And I don't think I really realized so much how important allies were, you know, until I started really talking about the allies in my life. So it's really, really important to have someone, you know, by your side, standing with you, advocating for you when you don't know how to advocate for yourself. Like, that's what an ally is. Like, you know, because someone on the outside could look in and say, oh, they're treating you like, you know, horribly. Like, don't you see what they're doing? Or don't you see that you deserve better? Or don't you see that you're missing something here? So, you know, you need an outsider actually to help you, you know, do what's best for you, I think. And that's the Allies Project. So go to our website. There's I think it was going to be in the chat, the link to the Allies podcast. We sort of have this, I don't know if you can see it. It's another Orthodox ally.
Higher.
And,
a little higher. There you go. Oh, cool.
You don't have to be Orthodox, but we give this to folks, you know, just to put on their refrigerators. I'm another Orthodox ally. So yeah, so that's, you know, and occasionally we will mobilize our allies to help us with either petitions or, you know, getting the word out on social media about something that we're doing. So yeah, that's definitely something that people can do. Like us on Facebook, I think that's important, to go to our organization page and just say that you like us.
Yeah. And of course, they can support you as well. And that information will also be on the Eshel website. So we'll share that as well. We did have a couple questions that I wanted to ask you. One is, you know, do you partner with other organizations either within or outside of the Jewish community, such as Keshet or Footsteps or any of the others? Or, you know, are you kind of working on your own?
No, we love to partner. And a good partnership is great. Like, we love a good partnership. We have definitely partnered with Keshet on trainings. When Keshet gets a call from an Orthodox school, they bring us in to do the training with them, or they'll just say, you guys do this, you know what you're doing. So, so yes, we love to partner, and we've done partnerships also with Footsteps, with JQ International. We had a 3-year partnership in Los Angeles to develop our program there with them. And with JWFNY, we've, you know, shown up at their conferences and done a lot of sessions, and yeah, we absolutely like to connect to other organizations, because it makes whatever we're doing richer, and it like opens up, like, every organization's like a door that opens up to a whole new group of people with a different set of experiences. So like, we're talking about partnering with No Shame on You in Chicago, and they work on combating stigma around mental health in the Jewish community. So that's like a wonderful partnership, because so many of our folks have mental health issues, and so there's a nice overlap. Yeah. So the answer is yes.
And when you're partnering with other organizations who are doing similar work, it becomes more of a movement in that way, right? I mean, it's that
Exactly.
critical mass. Together we're stronger.
Exactly.
Right?
Right,
So,
right. And we all have a place and we're doing something different along with each other. Like, you know, we're dovetailing. So that's
there was another question, you know, about the trans community coming out in the Orthodox community. And, you know, I guess whether or not that's different from people who are coming out as gay, you know, trans people also, how accepting is the Orthodox community when trans people undergo surgery, which is, you know,
right.
You know, the ultimate step in that process.
Yeah.
You know, can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe some of the people who you've been working with?
Sure. So, again, it's like different stages of life, you know, like when a kid comes out when they're trans, when they're 10 or 11 or 12, then the parent has to deal with the bar bat mitzvah question. And that really is, I have to say, that's the trickiest, and that's been really intense. The stories I've heard about negotiating that moment for people. And, you know, for older people or adults, a lot of rabbis will say, go away, come back as the other gender that you are, you know, and then you'll sit on that side of the mechitza. And they don't really, it's hard to deal with the in-between, you know, but once you present it's either male or female, then you actually can have a solid place somewhere. There is a whole set of responsa literature around transgender and halakha. Not widely accepted by every Orthodox rabbi, but it's there. Somebody really actually sat down and worked on it. And, you know, how a trans man can have an aliyah, but cannot lead prayers. Like, there's just different, like, things that, you know, people can do. And so at least somebody took it seriously and actually thought about it. We have a whole set of trans resources on our website that a volunteer and a board member put together with Rabbi Steve. And so I have to say we have a parent group, this wonderfully incredible, strong parent group. And then the subset of this, so we had this like monthly meeting, and then the group leader said to me, Miryam, the parents of trans kids have a whole other host of issues, and they really need help, like in a way that parents of gay and lesbian kids don't need help. So you need to make another group. So we actually now have a separate meeting for parents of trans kids, and we also have a WhatsApp, and they are really peer mentoring each other around all the questions like hormones, you know, surgery, dealing with your rabbi, you know, blockers, like, oh yeah, it's just like, it's all there. Like, some of them have already gone through it and are over onto the other side, and a lot of them are just starting. And, you know, we have parents with really little kids, you know, who are, you know, identifying as trans. So, so I think, you know, it's funny because, like, as a gay person, you can sort of be in the closet if you're in an Orthodox community. And as a trans person, before you kind of deal with the issues, you're also in the closet. But once you transition, like, you're sort of coming out. But then once you're settled into your identity, you can then come back more fully as a participant. So it's kind of like just a different trajectory. And where the rabbis and the communities have a very hard time is with gender nonconforming people. Barbara, I do still play basketball, thank you. Barbara and I have a history of playing basketball. I saw that in the chat.
I love that.
So, yeah, gender nonconformity is harder for pill to swallow. Orthodoxy is very binary. And so we're just trying to figure out how to teach about it, how to think about it. There's some wonderful gender bending stories, you know, in the Midrash and the Talmud. And so we try to extract them and teach them as inspiration.
A lot of homework to do. I'm going to have to go and reread everything with a different lens now. So thank you. Maybe you'll send us some text. Maybe we can include some of that in tomorrow's follow-up email, because the 9 different genders in the Talmud, I definitely want you to share that. I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for talking with us. We really appreciate it. And Melissa is going to wrap up in a second and give you all different ways in which you can continue to learn more about Miryam and the work that she's doing. I just want to thank you all for being here. Obviously, the high holidays are around the corner. I first of all want to wish you all the Shana Tova. Obviously, the high holidays are a time of renewal, and you know, I certainly for myself in the last few months, this has been a time of great reflection, and I'm renewing my commitment to issues of social justice. And if this is also your sort of pledge to yourself at this time for this year, please come to us. You'll have a home at JWFNY. This is the work that we're doing. These are the women we're supporting. This is the work that they're doing. If you believe in raising up women leaders, if you believe in supporting visionary change makers who are looking to do social justice and make social change, please get more involved with JWFNY, whether it's making a financial contribution or joining us for one of our many events. We have a lot on the horizon. I hope you will. Coming up in November, we'll be choosing our third cohort of fabulous women leaders. If you're interested in participating in that, there are ways to do that too. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who's going to give you some more information. But Miryam, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say. Just thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Yeah, all I want to say is really thank you, and thank to the entire Jewish Women's Foundation for all the great work you're doing, and to Jamie Allen Black for leading the charge.
Yes, we miss her today, but she has earned a very well-deserved vacation. So thank you again. And Melissa, we turn it over to you.
Thanks to you both. Thank you, Miryam, for taking the time to share your wisdom and your extraordinary stories with us. And thank you to Rachel for leading us through this conversation. I don't know about all of you, but I learned so much today. There's all the things that Rachel already said about the text that I didn't know about, the work that Eshel is doing, working both sides of the community, supporting not only LGBTQ individuals and their families, but also on the other side, working with the institutions to be more inclusive, because we know that that's real and important, and our community only grows if everyone in it steps up to the plate. We know even just from these conversations how important connection is, especially in this time. And connection that can extend beyond physical presence through the magic and technology, especially when it works, of video conferencing. And honestly, the one that's really going to stick with me today is Miryam's line about what Shabbat in utopia might look like. What a blessing that is to be able to spend time with your community as your full self. That's going to be with me for a little while, promise. We are so inspired by you, Miryam, by your leadership and your courage, and by Eshel's work, and we're so glad that you're part of our collective and our first cohort.
Thank you.
We always like to leave you, as you heard, with a few actions you can take after our conversations. You certainly can support. You can look at all of the different links that are in the chat box. You'll get many of them tomorrow, if not all of them, in our follow-up email. You can support Miryam and Eshel by following and engaging with their social media. We're also going to send you a sign-up link. As I said, it's in the chat, to become an Eshel ally. When you sign up, you'll receive a newsletter with news and opportunities for allyship, including the new podcast, which I'm excited to listen to. By directly supporting Miryam and Eshel, you work towards helping build an Orthodox community that's safe and welcoming to people of all genders, expressions, and orientations. What could be better than that? Nothing. As far as upcoming events, we have a very full calendar, but I'm only going to leave you with two. If you liked this conversation or any of the ones that came before it, our October Crown Jewel conversation will be with Rabbi B'nai Lapi, who I believe is on the call. She is the founder and Rosh Yeshiva of Svara, which makes Talmud study available to people of all backgrounds. That date is Thursday, October 1st at 4 p.m. Come and join us to hear how B'nai and her team are nurturing a love of Jewish tradition, again, across all creeds, expressions, orientations, genders, and what have you. And not less important, but certainly at fore of my mind, is that our 2020 convening is rapidly approaching. Our registration is open. We are gathering online on Monday, October 26th and Tuesday, October 27th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link is now, hopefully in the chat because I'm not looking at it. It will also be in your follow-up email tomorrow. This email is going to be very long and a lot of links, and I hope you click on all of them. We are going to be highlighting all of our jewels from cohorts 1 and 2, as well as some very exciting speakers, including, but not limited to, Rebecca Minkoff, Rain Pryor, Ruth Messenger, and Vanessa Hidary. I want to thank you both again, Miryam and Rachel, for your conversation today. Thank all of you for sticking with us and staying on the phone. And we'll see you soon. Have a good night and Shana Tova.
Thank you.